Some of the most powerful strategy analyses are on public sector organizations. Suppose you're interested, for example, in how the Chinese government is organized and whether or not it's got state-of-the-art practices in a particular activity. And just to give an example, suppose you're interested in the post office. You might compare the Chinese government in postal services in a particular area of the country, say, with postal services around the world to understand whether or not the Chinese government is executing with a state-of-the-art strategy here. Or alternatively, let's say that you're interested in, let's say, city government. You might look at whether or not a particular city government is running its pothole repair activities as effectively as some of its peers. But once you think through exactly the business unit that you want to study in a public sector organization, narrowing down the line of business to a activity that generates revenue and that incurs costs, once you've narrowed that down to a particular business unit, how do you estimate the industry average and take that next step toward completing the project? Well, the key is to find peers to the organization that interests you that compete in more or less the same way for revenue dollars and that have similar business models and therefore similar types of cost structures. There are two broad alternatives for how to pull this off. One, as I discussed just a moment ago with regard to the post office, one is to look in different geographies at peer organizations that may have similar structures. So if you're interested, for example, in the Chinese post office, you may compare them, say, to the post office in the United States and in Canada and in Australia, Germany, UK, and so on, and evaluate whether or not, let's say, the revenue per unit of population, per person in the country, is similar, whether the cost structure is similar, and so on. Compare that Chinese post office organization that you're interested in with its peer group. A second approach is to look in the private sector for peers that may be competing for that Chinese consumers. What about DHL, UPS, other express services providers that may be trying to basically steal that revenue from the Chinese post office and bring it into the private domain? What about the internet? How is the internet in China competing with the postal service? Either way, the goal is to find a peer group for which you compare that private sector organization so that you can assess its efficiency and effectiveness through the analysis that you're conducting.